Good morning.
Good morning.
We begin our worship this morning with these opening words by Reverend Gretchen Haley. It's a poem called "Let Astonishment Be Possible." Whatever you have come in anticipating, whatever you expect or worry for our world, for the future, for our lives, let it go and make space in your heart to be surprised. Make room in your soul for a new story to take shape. Let astonishment be possible. In this life, there remains a miracle. Imagine here the bursting of joy, relentless and resilient, coming in waves, washing over us with music and story and silence. And still this dreaming together, being hope for each other and courage to believe in this new day dawning for us all. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning. I am Marie Hauk. I'm a member of this congregation. Our guest minister this morning is the Reverend Patty Hanneman. Reverend Patty lives in Durham, North Carolina with her partner, Karen Hill. She is a graduate of the Meadville Lombard Theological School in Chicago and has served as campus minister at Duke University and parish minister in Hillsborough. Reverend Patty is now in private practice, feeding her passion for creating sacred, nurturing spaces for spiritual direction, worship, rites of passage, and creative conflict. Unitarian Universalists believe that each person has a trustworthy relationship with the Spirit, with the Holy, with the source of all life, with that abiding mystery some call God, though we name it and know it differently. As we believe that because we are interconnected, nobody is free until we are all free. So we strive to build beloved community here on earth, in our fellowship with one another, and in our work for justice. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you came to be here, you are welcome. Our ministry team here at UUCG is our minister, the Reverend Sadie Lansdale, who is off today and celebrating her birthday. Cindy Dillard, our Director of Children's and Youth Ministry, who is outside with the children, and our Congregational Administrator, Julie Hamilton. And we are excited to welcome Luke back as our temporary guest music coordinator? They're close enough. You can take this time to silence your cell phones. We stay masked throughout the service and whenever you are indoors, with exceptions for worship leaders who have all shown proof of vaccination. We will not be singing indoors. We may hum indoors. If you're joining us online, you can take time to minimize the distractions. And you can say hello to each other in the chat. Hello. Whether you're here for the first time or the 1,000th, you have a hand in shaping this time of reconnecting and experimentation. We have these brightly colored bands that you can use to indicate your comfort with people approaching you. Take a moment to look around at the bands that people are wearing who are sitting close to you. Red means greet warmly from far away. Yellow means you can say hi, but don't touch. Green means handshakes are welcome, and you can, as always, ask if someone would like to be hugged. Heather Rushforth will light our chalice. Please join me in our chalice lighting words found in your order of service. We light this chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, to connect in spirituality and service, to care for each other and the world, and to create loving community. And now will you join me in our church covenant, which is also printed in your order of service. A covenant contains the promises we make to one another in response to the great unearned and generous gift of living, holding ourselves to our holy and highest aspirations. We, the members of the Unitarian Universalist of Greensboro, do covenant to promote a search for personal meaning, respecting the individual truth in a community process of quest, speak and act with caring, courtesy, and love, thereby maintaining emotional, physical, and spiritual safety for all. Support UUCG and denominational efforts with our resources. Combat injustice while promoting equality. Nurture our children on their spiritual journey. Hold ourselves to this covenant, especially during times of conflict and disagreement. And here is Heather with our opening hymn.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and God, when we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
It's wonderful to be sharing this sacred space with all of you this morning, and I appreciate this invitation from Reverend Sadie to be here while she's celebrating her birthday. It is beautiful to be together with you all, and we gather in great gratitude for this morning, turning our hearts to thanks and praise for the gift of living in the presence of the Spirit that animates all of our lives, and in the knowledge that we are powerfully and profoundly connected to all that is, all that has been, and all that will be. At any time during our service, you can go to our joys and sorrows table to light a candle to symbolize the ways our burdens are lighted and joys are magnified, knowing that they are held in common space in this community. I invite you now to offer the names of those people who are on your hearts, living or dead, near or far, that this community might hold them in prayer and in love. Before you begin naming, I would ask that you keep Betsy Lindsay's brothers in your thoughts and prayers. He was in a serious car accident and is facing surgery and a long recovery. If you're joining us online, you may type your comments into the chat line. If you are present, I invite you to speak the names now. For those around the world who are suffering from causes natural or man-made, in Haiti, Afghanistan, the survivors of 9/11 who are still suffering 20 years after that occurrence. I invite us now into a time of silence together while you focus on something that you are grateful for, someone you are remembering, especially today, or just the sensation of being alive in this moment. Let's take a few breaths, breathing in and letting our out-breath be a little bit longer so that our bodies relax into this space. Spirit of life and love, thank you for being present to us this morning, especially during this time of holy listening. For many, we know this has not been an easy week. For those of us who are struggling, may you continue to hold them in love. For those who are celebrating, we celebrate with them. We receive the gift of this new day with deep gratitude, seeking to accept all that is past, seeking to embrace this moment that we share, and seeking to realize all that is possible, a greater justice, the joy of beauty, the fulfillment of peace within ourselves and between one another. We send all these prayers, spoken and silent, for you to hold in love. In the name of all that is holy, we pray for ourselves, for those we love, and for those we do not love. Amen, and blessed be.
We sing the things we cannot say, our prayers, our yearnings, our heartbreaks, our hope. Please join me in our humming meditation, Spirit of Life. One of the ways we live out our mission to create loving community is to contribute financially to the ministries of this congregation and to the good works of our community partners. In light of the news out of Texas about abortion restrictions, it is imperative that we understand this is not the 1950s anymore. Reproductive justice leaders are saying that it is irresponsible to behave as if there are no safe options other than a licensed medical provider, even as they fight to keep those options legal and to make them truly accessible. So in the spirit of supporting access, we are sharing the plate this morning with Carolina Abortion Fund. We know that without money, abortion rights are not enough. We know that it is mostly poor people and people of color who will suffer. And so we celebrate the blessing that is abortion care. We remember that a pregnant person is a life that matters too, not just the host of a future life. We recall that before the rallying cry was, "My body, my choice," it was free abortion on demand without apology. To honor those brave people who paved the way for safety and dignity in reproductive care, I ask you to give generously. If you'd like to make a contribution via PayPal to the church for your offering to be split with Carolina Abortion Funds, you can do so on our website and indicate split or shared offering in the memo line. You can also mail a check. Ushers will come forward to collect the offering with long baskets.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you
I apologize to everyone else here because I'm so short. I have to keep moving the microphone. Our reading this morning is from a book called The Last Best Hope, America in Crisis and Renewal by George Packer. These are the words that he ends his book with. One of the January 6th rioters was a 58-year-old handyman and loner from rural Virginia named Doug Sweet. When he was 13, Doug visited the Capitol for the first time, and he breathed the spirit of equality. I have a right to be here, he thought. This is America's building. My voice counts as good as everyone else's here. 45 years later, he entered the Capitol for a second time, now as an invader with a head full of conspiracy theories. Between 1975 and 2021, whatever tied Doug Sweet to democracy and reality snapped. In his delusion, he was convinced that his voice was no longer as good as anyone else's. It had been stolen from him. And he had every right to barge in and take away the voices of 81 million other Americans in order to get his back. What do we do with Doug Sweet? Punish him for his actions. Keep an eye on him. Anticipate more violence and prevent it with the tools the state already has. Expose, isolate, and discredit his views as much as possible so that the spread slows and is largely confined to the sphere of private fantasy. Drive his champions out of public office. Never let the American people forget what he did. And then, what about his millions of sympathizers? We can't jail them all, or deport them, or destroy them in total war, and then rebuild their communities while re-educating their children in democratic values. I'm tempted to say, the heck with them. Ignore them as long as they don't break the law. Let's make America again without them. But we can't ignore them. They won't let us. So we have to look for those ideas and policies and dreams that will make it possible to live together as equal Americans, unquote. Last Tuesday marks the beginning of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. And I can imagine that many of us, Jewish or not, are ready for a fresh start. The year 2021 has been another hard one, and it's not over yet. It began with an attack on our nation's capital, and I think many of us are still reeling from what that might mean for us as a democratic nation. The book that I quoted from by George Packer has been on my mind now for several weeks as I've continued to grapple with this question: what do we do with Doug Sweet? I've grappled with this because of our fifth principle that calls us to promote democratic processes, and because of our third principle, which asks us to promote acceptance of one another. So what do we do with Doug Sweet? Packer's ideas gave me a beginning place, a starting place for thinking about this. For those of you who have not read his book, I highly recommend it because it gave me a way of, a non-judgmental way of looking at the divisions among us in this country. I'm going to give you just a little bit of information about the book. I don't want to focus too much on the book itself, but I do encourage you to read it. He claims, his main claim is that we are in fact a nation divided, but not exactly the way many of us think about our divisions. We are not divided, he says, into red and blue. We're not even divided into cultures based on class, race, sexuality, or religion. We're not divided into conservative and liberal. Instead, he says we're divided into 4 separate narratives about what America should be about. And these 4 narratives have been with us for centuries. They ebb and flow depending on the generation, and then, according to what administration is in office. But they're pretty perennial. And Packer's perspective is also that each of these 4 narratives has its hopeful, valuable aspects and also some destructive elements, which is where the non-judgmental piece came from, which was really helpful to me. So let me just quickly give you a rundown of the 4 narratives that he said have been part of our American democracy since our very beginnings. They're called Free America, Smart America, Real America, and Just America. Free America story believes that we only have 2 national goals. One is to build a strong military that can defend our national interests, and the second is to be champions of individual freedom. So when you think about the Free America story or narrative, think about the Reagan era. Low taxes, light regulation, low domestic spending, but a lot of military spending and presence. That's the Free America story. The Smart America story is the narrative of the meritocracy. Think Bill Clinton's neoliberalism when you think about Smart America. Think about the complex government policies that were designed by experts to help people use their gifts as best they could, their talents having their talents take them as far as they could take them. That's the Smart America narrative. Smart Americans are optimistic, pro-technology, and very comfortable with increased global interdependence. Real America sees itself as the true backbone of our nation, which is why they think of themselves as the real Americans. Real America is popular with white, Christian, rural, and small town folks. It often includes those who have skills and talents using their hands. So plumbers, mechanics, electricians, home health care workers, farmers often fit into this category. Many of them are very resentful of the smart Americans because they see themselves as losers in this meritocracy, especially as it refers to new technologies that they have chosen not to have as part of their profession. And then lastly, Just America sees our nation as primarily a system of multiple systems of oppression. that need to be rooted out. This is a narrative that is quite common right now with the generation that grew up post 9/11, that had as part of their shadow world the 2008 banking crisis, the 20-year war in the Middle East. They've incurred incredible loads of debt for educations that don't seem to be working out for them as they had planned, and climate change. Just Americans tend to be kind of cynical about thinking that democracies can actually solve any of these problems. The fact is that whenever one of these narratives is not being heard, any one of them, when they're not heard and when they're not appreciated for the value that they might hold, it can erupt in violence. We human beings all have a very deep need to be heard. This is at the very center of what democracies offer, is providing systems where people can be heard. And in healthy democracies, those systems of listening and being heard, of give and take with one another, are very strong in a healthy democratic system. Being divided about what we feel democracy should be about is not new. But what is new, what has been new within the last several years, especially in this new century, is that we have retreated from doing the hard work of listening to people who we know are going to disagree with us. And I feel very strongly that if we are going to heal our democracy, we're going to have to stop pointing fingers at one another. We're going to have to stop that. That doesn't mean we don't keep working for a more just society. We have a prophetic tradition to do that. But it does mean that we need to consider what I call an activism of cohesion, a new kind of activism that has not been very prevalent in our nation of late. What if we were to expand our idea of activism to include actions that have as their goal to help heal our democracy? I'm calling each of you to remember our fifth principle, which in fact does ask us to do this, to promote democratic systems, not only within our congregations, but in society at large. And this requires an activism of re-engagement. I'm not asking to change your mind about anything, not yet anyway. I'm not asking you to take on a new set of values or shift your narrative to one of the other four that might not feel real to you right now. But I am asking you to consider a kind of activism that would be focused on bringing down the temperature by truly listening to the wisdom of some other narratives that you are not, you don't consider yourself part of. What would an activism of cohesion look like? What are its components? Well, first of all, I think recognizing that whatever narrative or narratives feel real to you, you might want to consider what the problems with that narrative are. Try to consider how that narrative might be seen by someone who doesn't share your life story. Free America, the policies of free Americans gave us the Reagan-Bush years, which pretty much destroyed the middle class. Smart America's meritocracy has given a kind of disdain for anyone who can't quite make it the way smart Americans have. Real America has a problem offering full equality to anyone who is not white, is not Christian, is not heterosexual. And just America leaves us very little to be proud of as Americans, because it doesn't share the narrative of the ways in which we have been successful, but only the ways that we have been unjust. And we all know that they are many. So as an activist, begin by looking at your own narrative and how it might be viewed by others. So that's the first step. And the second step is get out of your own comfort zone enough to spend time with people who have a different narrative. Study after study have shown that antagonistic groups begin to lose their mutual hostility and begin to trust each other when they're working together, as long as they're engaged in a specific project with outside help to kind of moderate. When I was a minister in Hillsborough, one of the things that I enjoyed about that work was I was part of a community organizing group where we would gather people from all parts of northern Orange County to talk about what they saw as the problems in their community. And it was always so incredibly eye-opening, because I found all kinds of people who were struggling with things in the community that I didn't share and I had no knowledge of. And so we would come together and try to resolve a problem that I had been previously unaware of. And often I was working alongside people whose politics and values were very different from mine, but we were there working on something together, whether it was safer schools or more diversity in the teachers in the public schools, or whatever it was something that we could agree on that bridged our politics. So the second step is try to find some of these places where you can learn to care deeply about people who might have a different narrative from you. This is not easy, especially in the time of this pandemic, to find those communities, but it's important, I think. And then third and finally, and this is, I think, where it becomes a deeply spiritual experience, practice being open-hearted when you're in these places. What do I mean about open-heartedness? The yogis teach us that there are energy centers in our bodies, or chakras, and that the most beautiful and powerful one happens to reside around our heart. And these chakras affect our daily lives as they focus and distribute and allow energy to flow through our bodies. This energy is often referred to as Shakti by the yogis, Qi in ancient Chinese medicine, or spirit in the Judeo-Christian tradition. Heart energy that surrounds our heart is a source, it's our source of love and inspiration and having a positive regard for life. It's available to each of us all the time, but most of us keep that energy closed inside. We keep our hearts closed to protect ourselves, protecting and pulling ourselves into a protected space so that our hearts don't get hurt. And whether this idea of chakra energy is something you can wrap your mind around or not, I ask you just for a few moments to imagine that it is absolutely true. And imagine now that you are talking with someone who you dearly love, and you feel very open and trusting in their presence, and because you trust them, your walls come down, and you feel lots of positive energy, open-hearted energy as you're talking to this person. Can you feel that? Do you know what that feels like? That open-heartedness? Now imagine that that same person says something that hurts you. And what does that feel like? That's heart closing, that tightness you feel. You're trying to protect a soft spot in your heart. And so your chest feels tight, your shoulders start to feel tight. Sometimes you can start feeling lethargic, or what the yogis call disturbed. You start to feel disturbed. And maybe you start thinking, well, maybe I made a mistake about this person. Maybe I don't love them so much after all, because they've just said something that hurt me. We all know that feeling. And now imagine that every time your heart closes and your heart energy gets stuck, it acts as kind of a spiritual plaque or slime around the valves that make it more difficult for that open-heartedness to stay present. The yogis call this placky stickiness around our heart energy samskara. I love the fact that it has the English word scar in the middle of it, samskara. It's this placky, sticky energy that stays around our hearts. The soft spots that can hurt us when somebody nicks at it. Now, all of us have, over the course of our lives, we have experiences that cause this kind of sluggishness, things that cause emotional hurt that become patterns in our lives. And true spiritual teachings almost always are about this energy and how to be open to it, how to keep our hearts open in the face of potential hurt. Most of the time when we get this tight feeling, when our hearts are closing to another person, it's because our egos are being attacked. The way we look, the way we act, the ideas that we have, that knowledge that we have worked so hard, spent so much time and energy and money on to become smart and knowledgeable and up to date. These can become soft spots in our hearts. So when they're attacked, we put up these shields. And then we have to act. Once we put that shield up, we have to act in order to fix that feeling of disturbance. So what do? We call on our minds to get us out of this disturbed place that we're in. We have to fix it. So the mind kicks in to help us fix it, and we say all kinds of things. We get defensive. We call in all that knowledge that we've worked so hard to accumulate for just such a moment as this one, as we're being attacked. You might even tell the person how you really feel about them, and now you have lost the ability to be a cohesion activist. Someone has gotten your goat again. Modern life, with its method of higher education that is much better at teaching us how to formulate ideas and argue for them rather than listening to the ideas of others, news outlets that are slanted to one narrative or another, social media that's even more slanted. All of these help reinforce the narratives that we already believe in. And all of these things that we believe in can become plaque in our heart center, building up, making us ever more sensitive to difference. But the fact is that closing your heart does not really protect you. It simply cuts you off from that wonderful chi energy that surrounds your heart. So if you're going to be a cohesion activist, watch your tendency to protect and defend yourself. Get familiar with your heart's soft spots. And when they get hit, relax your shoulders and take a deep breath and release the tension in your chest. People and their stuff will hit you every single day. You can depend on it. People want to get your goat. Let them have it. It's just a goat. And then lastly, remember that personal narrative, telling stories, is the natural and ancient method for human connection and communication. Stories are healing ways to communicate, whereas facts and figures tend to separate us. You, as an activist of cohesion, remember your end game here is not correction, but connection. It's not correction, but connection. So when you are in a space with someone who sees the world through a different narrative, try to move the conversation to a life story rather than facts to explain your point of view. Try to connect with them in whatever way you can. Maybe it's impossible, but if there's a piece of their story that you might actually agree with, or say, maybe you could say, I used to feel that. I used to think that way. But here's something that happened to me that made me feel very differently. So change the dialogue to story, because stories, life stories, cannot be argued with. They just have to be taken in. In time, you'll learn to recognize that moment when your chest begins to tighten and your energy begins to shift. You feel a little bit strange, and that's your cue to grow a little bit spiritually and be an activist. Relax, release, take the conversation in a new direction. And as you begin this work, this new kind of activism that might just save our democracy, notice who you feel drawn to and where you feel at ease, and spend some time there. Because we all need a home base where our ideas and values are cherished and where we feel safe. This is true of any kind of activism. Always have a strong home base. And notice who challenges you, who makes the edges of your ideas grow, who is hitting those soft spots. And spend some time there as well. Root yourself in the truth as you know it, and then move consciously to the edges of your certainty. And yes, you are going to get hurt along the way. But I encourage you to keep your heart open anyway, and that remember that there is a Holy One that embraces and loves all of us madly. including the Doug Sweets among us. May it be so, and blessed be.
Would you join me in our chalice extinguishing words, please? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And a couple of announcements. Hey, what's that you hear? Auction time is near. Online events still require a great effort, but many hands make light work. How can you get involved? Well, you can learn more about how you can share your behind-the-scenes towns by joining the weekly online meeting Thursdays at 6:30. There's a link in the newsletter. You are invited even if you only have a few minutes to spare. Begin brainstorming goods and gathering donations. The forms will be available in October. Mark your calendar for some fantastic pre-holiday shopping from November 9th through 13th. That's the 9th through 13th of November. Every effort counts. Chalice circles are a great way to deepen your connection. If you haven't already done so, I encourage you to consider completing the form for joining a chalice circle. A link can be found in the newsletter, and this morning, Kay Bishop has paper forms that you can fill out if you have neglected to fill out the one online or would prefer to use paper. Could I ask the lead chalice circle leaders to stand up? That includes me, by the way. You can approach me or any of these people if you have any questions about chalice circles. Thank you. And now it's time to say goodbye to our friends online. Say goodbye. Bye.